In this video, we're going to be going over some of the sketch tools that we use to create our parts in OnShape. To do this, we're going to create a new document in order to create our files. So go ahead and drop down the Create button, select Document, and title this one Sketching. We'll be using the same document for a couple of activities, doing each activity in a separate part studio. So go ahead and click OK, and OnShape will generate your new document for you. As we talked about in other things, this gives us multiple areas we can work in to create different parts, an assembly area where we can put them together, all the stuff that we need. Now in this video, it's highly important that you understand that what we're going to teach is the sketch tools. That's where we're going to start. We are going to do some things in this video that we don't normally do. So it is very clear that you understand that we are not going to end our sketch for this video with having it fully defined. We will use some dimensions to make sure that you can do those correctly on different shapes, but we will not end up with all of our shapes in enclosed areas fully defined. This is the only video where that is acceptable. So here's where we're going to go. First thing that you already saw me do is I clicked on, with my view cube, I clicked on the front view to look at the front view. I will then click the front view or the front plane as it is and click Sketch. And it'll open up an array of sketch tools and sketch definition tools. Again, a couple of which we will use in this video. We'll focus on most of them in a different video. So right now, the other planes, the top plane and the right plane, their lines kind of make a little 4 square area here. So we're going to use those 4 different square areas for different types of tools. So the first tool we're going to use, the first tool actually in our sketching menu. So the sketching menu goes from the line tool all the way across. But for creating things, we've got our lines, our rectangles, our circles and ellipses, our arcs, our polygons, our splines, text, and then we've got some other modification tools here. We're going to be going over most of these shapes type tools here. We're going to do some of them in more advanced videos. Now, real quick, I'm going to just change a couple things so that mine matches the way yours looks, because basically all of your tools will have, or some of your tools have these little drop-down arrows. As you can see, when you first come in, it starts with whichever one's the top one in the list. So that's how you can know what to do. They choose the top one in the list because it's the one, in theory, that is the most commonly used. So the first tool that we're going to talk about is the rectangle tool. This is the one that we use for drawing squares and rectangles. It's important to understand. Difference is, for a rectangle, you have opposing sides are the same length with 90-degree corners. And for squares, you have all 4 sides equal length with 90-degree corners. So that's why the same tool will make both squares and rectangles. So I'm going to go ahead and take my rectangle, and right now it's a corner rectangle. So in the first top left area, I'm going to click, and I am going to click again. By the way, my drawing is in millimeters. If you don't have it set that way, you will end up with a problem at the end. So again, it's just click once, let go, click a second time, let go. I've made my rectangle. You can see that it does show me the sizes. Now, I don't necessarily need to get these exact the first time, because I can click on my dimension tool. I can click on one side of my rectangle. And, excuse me, sorry, I accidentally clicked the plane and it tried to do the distance between it. So I'm going to go right here and set this to 35. I'm going to go ahead and go to the bottom of the rectangle and set this to 50. Those numbers are, sorry, if you happen to mess up like I just did, take your dimension tool off, double click on the dimension, and change it back. These dimensions are what you should set your rectangle to, so you should draw this exact same rectangle in yours. Okay. The other way that it is very common to use a rectangle is the second one, which is called a center point rectangle. So if you click the drop-down menu next to the rectangle tool, you can pick center rectangle. With the center rectangle tool, your first point you click is actually the exact center of the rectangle. This works really nice, especially if you're working with like overlapping circles and rectangles and stuff like that, because the circles automatically have a center point and you can just automatically line those two up. It's a very nice thing. Since I don't have a circle to do that with, I'm just going to use this top left corner. So I'm going to click here, and as you see, as I pull out, I'm basically defining where this lower right, or if I went the other way, upper left corner would be. You can go towards any corner actually, but this is fine. So I'm going to just go ahead and make a rectangle again. I'm going to get my dimension tool. As you notice, I do try to make the dimensions out of the way as much as I can. Sorry, it didn't like what I selected. It doesn't like me selecting that line. That's interesting. All right, I'm going to try the other side first. And I am going to make this 20 millimeters. And now that that line isn't on the very edge of the sketch, it might be more happy with it. And I'm going to make this 40 millimeters. Okay, so I just try to keep everything kind of in this quadrant. Again, we're not using the dimensions to actually locate this, which is why even though the rectangles are both fully defined in terms of their size, they're not in terms of their location with respect to the origin. If I had started with this corner right on the origin, you'd notice that these lines would be black. However, my dimensions would be creeping into my other quadrants that I was leaving for other tools. Next, I'm going to move to the right, and we're going to go with the circle tool. The top choice is a center point circle. This works just like the center point rectangle in that with this tool, I click once and I pull out, and where it starts is the center of the rectangle, and where it ends is just a point that I click. When I get the dimension tool, I can click on my rectangle and it gives me a diameter dimension. Now remember, a diameter dimension, as you can see if I pull this to the inside, goes all the way across through the center. So I'm going to put this down and I'm going to make this 32 off of square numbers. Okay, so this is 32 millimeters in diameter. So again, from basically top to bottom or left to right or from any 2 points that are opposite the center, okay, through the center. The other one that gets used, they do have a 3-point circle. I've seen this used rarely. Basically, if I wanted to put a circle inside like a square or a triangle, I could click like the center points of there and it would make a circle that touches all 3 points. It's not as useful as it sounds. But the other one that we use is an ellipse. This is to make an oval-like shape, but it has some extra rules. So when I click, it picks the center point, and I'm either going to go up or I'm going to go sideways. And what it's going to do is it's going to define the distance. As you can kind of see, there's a little bit of a line that right now goes through that 31 number, and that's the distance that I'm defining. Or I'm sorry, that's the direction I'm going. The measurement is actually straight across. So I'm going to click, and I actually need a third click to then define the other direction. Okay, and here's what these numbers are doing. Let me get out of the tool. I don't know if it'll let me. Yeah, the numbers then go away. But if I do the dimension tool and I click on it and I pull up, you'll notice I can dimension it all the way from side to side. So we're going to do that as 30. And I'm going to click this and pull off this direction. And I'm going to do this as 15. So it makes an oval shape, but it's a very controllable oval shape because we'll tell the software exactly how long it is from end to end and how tall it is from top to bottom. So that's how we can use an ellipse to create controllable ovals. Okay. Now our next tool, as we keep going sideways, is an arc tool, and I can't really use arcs by themselves. Just as a little side note, you'll notice that when I make an enclosed shape, it kind of shades in gray, and that's something that's going to be really important as we get into making extrudes, revolves, and the other things to turn stuff three-dimensional. So we're going to continue with that. So we're going to use some line tool stuff as well as some arcs to make some shapes down here. What you're going to end up with is kind of an L-looking shape that ends up filled in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my line tool and I'm going to make an L. Now, if you watch, the vertical relationship constraint, whichever term you like using, comes up showing me I'm drawing a straight vertical line, which is perfect. And I will click, and then I'm going to go in a horizontal direction. And again, it shows me what I'm drawing horizontally. Okay. If you happen to make a mistake, you can always click on that line and click either the horizontal or vertical thing here. I'm going to show you a third one, which is equals. Equals is a cool one. So if I click one, I hold the shift key on my keyboard and I click a second one. So you'll see that both lines turned orange. If I click equal, then the relationship that they have, and you can see the relationship when I hover over the line, is that they are equal. So what's kind of cool is if I come down here with my dimension tool and I make this 30, sorry, it's thinking about that. Sorry about that. My OnShape locked up a little bit. I think it has something to do with recording the video. But where I left off is you'll notice I put the one dimension in and both lines are now 30 millimeters. If I double click on this and change it to 40, both lines grow. So it's really cool when you know that the relationship between those lines is equal. You can put the equals constraint on them. And if I was fully defining this, that would fully define it. So I'm just going to go ahead and move that in. And what we're going to do is we're going to mess with our arcs. Okay. The first one is a 3-point arc. Here's how a 3-point arc works. I am going to click a starting point and I will click an ending point. So these are the 2 points where the arc ends. Okay. My third click defines how curved this is. So if I want it to kind of balloon out, I would pull way up. If I want it to just be more of a soft arc, I'm going to be somewhere down in here. Okay. Now here's how I can define in terms of size my arc. If I click the one point and the other point, I get a dimension between them. And I'm going to pull this up here. And I'm going to go ahead and make that 15. And then I have the radius of the arc. You'll notice the radius dimension has a capital R in front of it. And I just want to show you that because remember, the radius is from the center outward, just as you can see when I pull it down here. But that's indifferent than the dimension measurement because a complete circle gets a dimension measurement and an incomplete circle or an arc gets a radius measurement. The radius I want to use for this one is going to be 10. So there we go. That's how a 3-point arc works. Very, very useful. The one that I think is actually the most useful, but maybe has a little bit of terminology that goes with it, is what's called a tangent arc. What this allows you to do, just like the icon shows, is basically have a line remain tangent to the arc that you're creating. Tangent means the line, even if it was extended forever each direction, will only touch that circle or that arc in one place. Okay? So as I grab that, as I start from here, you see that it keeps that relationship in that I can't really, if you look at this line and continued it forever outward, it would never touch the arc again, no matter what I do. That's why you only see the center move at certain times. Even if I turn this into a complete circle, that would be true. So we're going to bend downward. And the nice part is if you wanted a half circle, which I am going to show you, that's how I'm going to show you using this, I can get directly below my start point and everything kind of oranges up and shows me that I'm there. So I'm going to click that. I'm going to grab my dimension tool. And from here to here, don't know why this isn't liking my video. Oh, there we go. From there to there, I'm going to make it 15. I really don't need to do anything else because one of the relationships that was, I'm going to take this off. One of the relationships that was added, if you see, if I get on this point, is a vertical relationship. And if I click on this, you can see the vertical relationship is with the part right above it. So that works great. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just box this in so that we get an enclosed shape, which is fine. And you can see if I start from this point and pull straight down at some point, if I get close to this point, it'll kind of give me a guide. And I can go vertical and horizontal and then draw that right in. Okay. The last one that I'm going to show you is a center point arc. This is sometimes the most common tool shown in other softwares, but it is useful. Both this and a 3-point arc are very, very useful. So a center point arc, my first click is where's the center of the arc. You'll notice when I made my other arcs, it does show you a little center point. So that's the point you're picking. This point I'm going to pick kind of the inside of this L shape is right there. And I get kind of this circle. Just know that it creates the arc counterclockwise. So in this instance, I'm going to start at this point and I'm going to create it up till that point. Okay. That's always true. If I wanted an arc to start at this point, I'd have to start there and go this way. It always goes counterclockwise from the center point. Okay. You don't always pick the first horizontal leg, because if I did out here expecting it to draw an arc upward, it won't. Okay. I always have to go counterclockwise. So that's the arcs and lines section. You can see I ended up making kind of a more complex looking shape using arcs and lines. Now, just to kind of finish up here, going back to what most people call the simplest, think of as the simplest one. I want to show you a couple of little tips and tricks with your lines tools and with your relationship tools. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come kind of down to the lower part of that quadrant, and I'm going to come up here, straight up, straight out, straight down, in, not all the way to the back to that line, down just a little bit, out to this line, down a little bit, and then back down and here and there. All right, so the first thing you're going to check, so yes, I just made a bubble letter of the letter F. First thing I want to check is make sure everything is either horizontal or vertical. Okay, so if you click on it and it or hover over it and it doesn't show you that, or like this one, you can really see that it's not what it should be. Oh, that was interesting. I don't know if everybody caught that, but this has a relationship on it where it is tangent to that circle up there. And I didn't mean for that to happen. So if you ever do that, so notice my process. I click on the line, the relationships show up. Sorry. I click that one and it stays highlighted even if my mouse comes off of it. If I push delete, that relationship goes away. So if you end up with an accidental relationship, you don't need to worry about it. All right. So just making sure that my lines are all exactly straight up and down by just hovering, and that's great. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make this 60 millimeters. And I'm going to make this 40 millimeters. Now, there are some things that I could do to like make sure certain things end up exactly the right size, but I'm going to use some of my relationship tools first. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to click the end of this. I'm going to hold my shift key. I'm going to get the end of this, and although it may seem weird, I'm going to get this. Okay. And what the deal is I want all 4 of those lines to be equal length, because what that'll do is it'll essentially make my the parts of the F shape here, the bubble parts, all the same size. So I can make those equal to, and everything gets equal. I'm going to then grab a dimension tool, and as soon as I make this 15, see all of them become 15. I can also make them 12 and everything gets thinner. I'm actually going to go with 12 because I really like how that looks. Okay. And if certain things were defined, we would actually then get a lot of these lines would have just turned black. About the only thing that isn't defined right now is the fact that the distance from here to here is going to be 20. And if this, again, if my location on my F was defined, you would actually see that all of this would then have turned black. So a complex shape like an F, we can kind of help that out by using our equals tools and thinking about what we want. And we end up with all those relationships helping us out. So this is where I'm going to end the actual sketching video. So as the last question that's going to be asked of you in this video, and the one that's worth most of the points for completing this activity, is I want you to roll your mouse back away from you, so up or towards the screen, so it zooms out a little bit. You're going to make sure you have no tools selected. You are going to click over here and highlight so that all of your shapes turn orange. Okay? And then in the bottom right-hand corner down here, you're going to see a little scale, and next to it, you're going to see a little measuring tape. You're going to click this where it says Show Measure Details. Okay? And I'm going to, just to show you what it looks like but not give the answer away, I'm going to highlight part of it and click that button. And what you're going to look for is this length. This is the total length of all the lines that are currently highlighted. Okay? So whatever this number is the correct answer for the last question that you should see right now.